Hey guys, tonight we're sneaking past the portcullis of a medieval castle. Not to raid, not to rescue, but to try something much harder. To get a decent night's sleep without freezing to death. The stone walls tower above you, rough to the touch, damp with the breath of centuries. The gate creaks shut behind you, and it's already colder than you expected. Colder than outside, even. Welcome to your first night inside a medieval fortress, where insulation wasn't invented, and the only warmth is what you bring with you. You're not in some grand hall filled with firelight and roast boar. No, you're in a modest chamber tucked into the inner keep. The door is oak, swollen from moisture, and doesn't quite shut. The window, if you can call it that, is a slit just wide enough for an arrow to pass through. And through that opening comes the icy breath of the night air, slithering across the flagstone floor like a cold, invisible cat. You try to pull your cloak tighter. You're wearing 3 layers, but your teeth are already chattering. There's no fire here. In fact, most rooms in medieval castles didn't have a fireplace at all. You'll learn quickly. Fires were reserved for the Great Hall, the Lord's Chamber, or the kitchens. Places where many gathered or someone important slept. You're neither. You've been given a sleeping spot in a small side room with a wooden frame bed and a thin, lumpy sack of straw. If you're lucky, it's relatively fresh straw, not the musty kind that's been slept on for months. You press your hand into it, and a crunch echoes back. Something skitters. You decide not to investigate. The stone walls radiate chill, not in a poetic sense. They literally radiate cold. During winter, limestone and granite absorb the freezing air and hold it. Touching the walls is like putting your hand against a block of ice. And unfortunately, those walls surround you on all sides. You try to settle in. The blanket is wool, scratchy and heavy, but not nearly big enough to tuck beneath you and over you. Your breath fogs in the dark, catching the moonlight that filters in through the narrow slit in the wall. There's no glass, just the open air. Castles didn't often bother with glazed windows until much later, and even then only the richest could afford the expense. Most of the time, shutters were your only defence. And guess what? Tonight the shutters cracked. Wind whistles through the gap like a ghost trying to sing. At this point, you start to wonder, how did anyone live like this, let alone sleep? Well, most people didn't expect comfort. Sleep in the medieval period was less about coziness and more about survival. You didn't wind down with a hot drink and a warm lamp. You collapsed, exhausted, wherever you were permitted, especially inside a stone fortress where warmth was scarce, and privacy even scarcer. You pull the blanket tighter and shift your weight. The straw rustles again. You hope it's just straw. Now let's add a twist. You're not alone in this room. In fact, you're sharing this bed. Not in a romantic way, just in a practical medieval one. Sleeping 2 or 3 to a bed was common, sometimes more. Heat shared was heat saved. Whether it was a sibling, a stranger, or a servant, you were often bundled together like firewood. And speaking of firewood, there's none in here. You briefly fantasize about sneaking into the kitchen and curling up near the hearth. But those privileges are for cooks, guards, or favoured squires. You're neither of those either. So you lie back, stare at the beams overhead, where cobwebs drift gently in the updraft, and listen to the sounds of the castle. A faraway clang of armour, the soft groan of timber, rats scratching inside the wall. Welcome to medieval sleep. Your body starts to adjust, or maybe it just gives up protesting. You tuck your knees toward your chest and bury your face in the crook of your arm, but your nose still stings from the cold and the tip of your ear feels like it's icing over. You try lying flat, then curled again, then flat again. There is no perfect position. Every angle presses against the straw or exposes some sliver of skin to the freezing air. You think about the people who once called this castle home. Knights, nobles, servants, prisoners, all of them forced to find sleep between these same bitter walls. It's easy to imagine a time when this room was filled with the smells of wool, sweat, and damp earth. No soap, no central heating, just bodies, layered in linen and cloaks, snoring and shivering. You shift your foot and hit something solid under the straw. A stone. Of course. The floor beneath the bedding is solid rock. No wood planks to buffer the cold. Castles weren't designed for comfort. They were designed for defence, with thick stone slabs underfoot and above, to hold firm against siege and flame. And yet somehow, even with all that might, they let in every ounce of winter. Now, let's say you're lucky, or well-born. Upstairs, in the solar or the Lord's chamber, a carved wooden bed might wait. Canopy above, thick tapestries on the wall, velvet curtains around the mattress to hold in warmth. Sounds nice? Perhaps. But even the nobility had to deal with stone walls, draughty corners, and fires that sputtered out overnight. Plus, there was always the smoke. Here's the funny thing. If you did have a fireplace in your room, it didn't mean you were sleeping in comfort. Fireplaces in medieval castles were often shallow, inefficient, and sent more smoke into the room than up the chimney. A cosy hearth could easily choke you with soot or fill the air with enough haze to make your eyes sting all night long. Some sleepers would let the fire die early to avoid waking up coughing, or worse, not waking at all. You try to distract yourself. You stare at the ceiling. One of the wooden beams has a long crack, like it's been yawning open for years. You wonder who built it. Whether they froze too, whether anyone ever truly slept warm here. The castle groans again. Wind moans through the stairwell. Somewhere, a distant door bangs open and shut. Now the cold doesn't just cling to your skin, it seeps into your thoughts. You think of your fingers stiffening, your toes curling in pain, your breath getting shorter. Cold like this doesn't just make you uncomfortable. It wears you down, slows your thoughts, weakens your body. And yet, people lived like this for centuries. Some even slept better than we do now. You see, medieval sleep was often broken into two parts. First sleep and second sleep. You drift off shortly after sunset, wake up around midnight and lie awake for a few hours before falling asleep again until dawn. During that in-between time, people prayed, talked, or even wandered the halls. And when it was this cold, sometimes they just huddled tighter, afraid to leave the covers for anything, even God. The truth is, you start to understand it all a little better. You feel every draught, every ache, every flicker of heat that isn't there, and you realise this wasn't some distant world of gallant knights and glowing torches. This was life and sleep. It wasn't restful. It was a nightly battle, and tonight it's your turn to fight it. The next night comes quickly. Too quickly, if you're honest. You didn't sleep much the first time. Maybe 2 or 3 hours, broken into shivers and startles. And now it's happening all over again. You shuffle toward your designated bed with the stiff walk of someone who's already sore. The straw mattress hasn't improved. In fact, it seems flatter now, like your body pressed all the air out of it. You kick it around a bit, hoping to fluff it back to life. All you manage to do is stir up a musty scent of mildew and something suspiciously rodent-like. This is the truth about sleeping in castles. Most people didn't have beds. What they had was bedding, and bedding meant whatever you could throw on the floor. A coarse linen sheet, a bundle of straw or hay, maybe some rushes scattered beneath it. Sometimes the straw was packed into a sack, known as a palliasse. That was the closest thing to a mattress unless you were a lord, and you're not. You lie down and feel a crunch just under your hip. Maybe it's the same stone as last night. Maybe it's new. It doesn't matter. There's no moving it. And the straw? It's not just uncomfortable. It's alive. You try not to think about the flea bites on your ankle. You scratched them raw this morning without realizing it. And the bump behind your knee, that might be a spider bite. Or maybe it's just one of the little beetles that like to nestle inside warm bedding. You're starting to get familiar with the nightlife of medieval castles. None of them are charming. You shift your head and feel something wriggle in your ear. Just a strand of straw. You hope. Some people brought herbs into their bedding, dried lavender, rosemary or mint, crushed and sprinkled among the rushes. It helped with the smell, maybe repelled a few bugs, but most of all, it was a desperate attempt to make this nightly experience feel less like punishment and more like ritual. Tonight, there are others with you in the room. You count 6 bedrolls, if you include the one by the door. One of the men snores like a dying bellows. Another mutters in his sleep. Someone is chewing something, loudly, in the dark. You don't ask questions. It's strangely intimate, this collective suffering. There's a comfort in numbers, even if none of you speak. The closeness provides something more valuable than conversation. Warmth. You wedge yourself between 2 sleeping figures. They barely stir. One of them shifts and grunts, but doesn't push you away. That's just how things are here. No one owns their sleeping space. Everyone's skin touches someone else's. In winter, privacy is a luxury no one can afford. The person to your left smells like tallow and smoke. The one on your right has a foot twitch that keeps knocking your shin. You pretend it's rhythmic. You pretend it's not annoying. That's how you cope. And here's the worst part. You still might not fall asleep. Because every twitch in the straw might be a rat. Every cough might be the start of something worse. You didn't forget the story the cook told earlier, that some servant in the lower hall woke up last winter with a dead mouse pressed to his cheek, stiff and cold, like a little furry coin. You shudder and pull the scratchy blanket over your head. It's going to be a long night. Eventually your breathing evens out, not because you're warm, not because you're comfortable, but because your body has no choice. It slips into something that could pass for sleep, or maybe just resignation. But even in that half-conscious state, you're aware of every shift in your surroundings, every snap of straw, every foot dragged across stone. Somewhere nearby, someone lets out a sudden yelp and slaps their leg. A flea bite, maybe. Or worse, bedbugs. That's another thing about these communal sleeping spaces. You share everything. Warmth, breath, lice. You wonder if the nobles upstairs have it better. They have beds, real beds. Wooden frames with ropes stretched across, layered with a feather mattress stuffed with goose down. But even those comforts aren't what they seem. Feathers shift. They clump. They leak. And they attract vermin. The noble beds, while softer, often hosted their own colonies of unwanted guests. Lice didn't care about class. But let's say you were granted a favour. One of the guards, gruff but pitying, gave you a cot tonight, raised off the floor. For a moment you're hopeful. You think, finally, something dry. And it is. Drier at least. But not much better. You lie down and the wood creaks like it's remembering every back it ever carried. The blanket you're given smells of smoke and old cheese. You try not to think about that. The mattress is barely an inch thick. Just another palliasse, but this one's sewn into shape. The stuffing inside, still straw, still crunchy, still full of mystery. You stare at the ceiling again, this time with a bit more height between you and the rats. That's something. The sounds of the hall fade to a low murmur, but the cold does not. In fact, it might be worse up here, away from the shared heat of the floor sleepers. The draught from the window catches your face directly now, whistling like a ghostly whisper that won't let you rest. You roll to your side and your shoulder presses into the wood rail. There's no room to sprawl. Beds were short, not because people were shorter, but because they often slept semi-upright. Some believed lying completely flat was too close to death. Others simply had to sleep upright due to chronic breathing problems or the constant pressure of cold air settling in their lungs. One story floats through your mind. A chambermaid once said her mistress kept a piglet under the bed for warmth, not to eat, just to share body heat. You don't have a pig, you just have your blanket, your straw, and your increasingly stiff limbs. You curl your toes, they're numb. The stone beneath the cot, even through thick boots and a wool sock, feels like it's radiating some ancient chill, like the castle itself is alive and disapproves of your presence. And yet, this is how it was, night after night, month after month. You finally close your eyes, not because you're comfortable, but because you're too tired to care. And as you drift off, you think, not for the last time, that the people who lived and slept in these castles weren't just survivors of war or famine. They were survivors of the night itself. The third night brings with it a sense of bitter acceptance. You've stopped expecting warmth. Now you're simply hunting for less cold. That's the true goal in a medieval castle. Not comfort, not even rest. Just the avoidance of misery's sharpest edge. Tonight, you draw the short straw, literally and figuratively. You've been placed in a room with a slit window, unshuttered and facing the north wind. They say it's a guard chamber, but there's no one guarding anything now. Just you, a bundle of straw, and a blanket that smells faintly of mutton fat. You approach the window first. There's no glass, not even oiled parchment, which wealthier manors sometimes use to soften the draught. Just a raw, narrow opening that looks out onto a bleak expanse of grey sky and skeletal trees. The slit is designed for defence, of course, to let arrows fly out but not in. Trouble is, it's also a wind tunnel. You press your palm near the opening and feel it immediately. A steady breath of winter air pushes through, slow and unforgiving, like someone exhaling directly onto your cheek. You try propping a bit of cloth in the gap, but there's nothing to hold it in place. The cold flows around it like water around a rock. You settle back toward your bedding. The floor is stone, again. Always stone. No rugs, no rushes tonight. The straw is looser than usual and spreads when you move, exposing bare floor beneath. You already know this means waking with a sore hip and a numb spine. But what really gets to you is the damp. It's in everything. The walls weep with condensation. The floor feels slick. Your blanket has absorbed the air itself, becoming clammy and heavy. The chill here doesn't just wrap around you, it seeps in. Through your sleeves, into your chest, all the way down to your bones. This room, you realise, is colder than the one outside. You could build a snowman in here and it wouldn't melt. And that's not an exaggeration. Accounts from the period described water basins frozen solid indoors. Ink turned to sludge, wine to slush. Breath hung like fog clouds until morning. You shift your weight again and hear the wind's whistle dance through the window slit. That sound becomes your lullaby, shrill, strange, like some half-tuned flute that only knows one note, cold. You glance up at the ceiling. There's no timber overhead tonight, just bare stone, curved slightly like a vault. It echoes. Every noise you make returns to you half a second later, like the castle itself is mocking you. And yet, people slept here. Guards on rotation. Stable hands given a temporary corner. Messengers too tired to ride back. This was survival, not preference. To make it worse, there's no heat source at all in this room. No brazier, no fire grate. Just a cold metal bucket in the corner with a few blackened coals from some long-forgotten attempt. If you had a flint and tinder, maybe you could revive it, but then you'd fill the room with smoke, because there's no chimney either. One noble once insisted on using a brazier in such a space. It seemed like a good idea, until he suffocated in his sleep. The cold was a risk. The cure was sometimes worse. So you give up on fire. You try instead to become as small as possible. Tuck yourself into the fetal position. Draw the blanket tight over your head. You focus on your breath. Inhale, feel it warm the wool. Exhale, and try not to let that warmth escape. Over and over, like a desperate form of meditation. This is sleep in a drafty tower room. Not peaceful, not still, but stolen in shivering fragments between the gusts of wind. At some point deep into the night, your body stops protesting and simply endures. That's what most people did back then. They didn't conquer the cold. They submitted to it, moulded themselves around it like wax left near a window. Not melted, just softened into shape. You wake once to a sharp drop of water hitting your temple. You flinch, sit up, and look around. It's not raining, but it is dripping from the ceiling. The vault above you weeps condensation. Cold stone, warm breath, and night moisture conspire to create a constant, quiet leak. You check your blanket. It's damp in places, heavier than when you lay down. The draft from the window slit is still going strong, slicing through the room in slow, rhythmic pulses. You'd swear it gets colder with each gust. Maybe it does. The moon has shifted and its light no longer hits the floor. Instead, your room is swallowed in a kind of ancient black, thick, velvet dark, the kind that makes your ears ring from the silence. You sit up, breathing shallowly. It's too cold to keep sleeping. Your limbs ache and your fingertips sting. You want to move, but the floor is a trap. Once your feet touch it, the cold climbs up your legs like vines. Still, you rise. You press your hand to the stone wall to balance, instantly regretting it. The stone is slick and frigid, like touching a frozen fish. You pull back and tuck your hands beneath your arms for warmth. There's no torch in here. You'd hope there might be a candle stub, but even if there were, wax was precious. Common folk didn't burn candles all night. They used them sparingly, in little clay holders, and never near their bedding, for fear of setting the whole place alight. Fire killed as easily as frost. You peer toward the window slit. Outside, you think you see snow. Or maybe it's just moonlight on the stone sill. Either way, it makes you colder. There's an old story you remember about a young servant who tried to plug his window slit with bread. Not because he was hungry, but because it was the only thing soft enough to stuff into the gap. It worked for a few nights, until rats found it. One morning, the boy woke to find half a loaf gone, teeth marks in the rest, and a rat tail hanging from the slit. You don't have bread. You just have fingers, straw, and the shrinking hope that dawn will come soon. You lie back down, not to sleep but to conserve heat. You shift your blanket so it creates a kind of tent, breathing into the space to warm it with your breath. It works, a little. The air inside becomes heavy, humid. You feel a bit of relief, and then condensation forms and drips. Everything is a cycle in this room. Cold, moisture, brief warmth, then cold again. But in time, your eyelids begin to droop. The stone is no longer sharp beneath you. The draught no longer bites as deeply. Your thoughts slow. This is what sleep becomes in a draughty castle. Not comfort, not luxury, but the body's quiet surrender. It takes what it's given, and tonight, that means drifting off beneath dripping ceilings and winter breath, in a room not made for rest, but for surviving the hours until dawn. At last, you're offered a change of scenery, a chance to sleep where the nobles do. Tonight you're invited to rest in the Lord's chamber. It sounds like a promotion, a privilege, maybe even a dream, and at first glance, It is. Compared to the stone crypt you endured last night, this place feels almost human. The fire is lit. A real fire, not just embers in a bucket. It dances in a wide hearth with a carved lintel above, flickering against heavy wooden panels and tapestries hung on the wall. The floor is wood, not stone. Your boots don't echo as you walk. That alone feels like a miracle. In the centre stands a bed, massive, towering, a frame of dark oak with carved posts that stretch up like trees. Curtains hang thick on all sides, heavy velvet or wool dyed deep colours, scarlet, green, perhaps even blue if the lord is wealthy enough. The mattress is soft, the kind you sink into. There are pillows, sheets, and over everything, layers of blankets folded like clouds. You stare at it, stunned. This is the best bed in the castle. Surely this is warmth. Surely this is comfort. You peel back the curtain and climb in, and then it hits you. The fire doesn't reach here. Not really. That glow you admired, it doesn't penetrate the thick curtains. Inside the bed, it's as dark and cold as a storage cellar. The mattress is indeed soft, down-stuffed perhaps, but it's also cold, having soaked up the air for hours. And those beautiful sheets, icy to the touch, so cold they cling to your skin like wet cloth. You dive beneath the layers and begin the same ritual. Curl, breathe, tuck, repeat. You exhale to warm the space around your mouth, but the air turns damp again just like before, and despite this being the Lord's chamber, the same stone walls remain, and they're still cold. Worse, the bed is raised above the floor on a wooden platform. That height, meant to keep one away from rats and draughts below, also lifts you closer to the open ceiling beams, where heat never lingers. So much for luxury. You roll onto your side and try to enjoy what you can. The mattress doesn't crunch. The blankets don't smell like barn animals. There's no flea to bite you yet. But sleep still doesn't come easily. The fire crackles in the hearth, but it's too far away. The warmth fades before it reaches your toes. In castles like this, fireplaces were status symbols more than effective heaters. The smoke often escaped poorly, and much of the heat was sucked straight into the chimney and out into the night. You open the bed curtains a little, hoping to let in some of that orange glow. And what you see in the corner makes you pause. A servant, young, curled up on a sheepskin near the wall, wrapped in a cloak too big for her. She's asleep, barely. But you see her lips move, mouthing something, maybe a prayer, maybe just shivering syllables. Even in the Lord's chamber, someone sleeps on the floor, and suddenly your soft bed feels less like a gift and more like a reminder. Comfort in this world is relative. Warmth is relative, and most of the time it's temporary. You try to settle again, pulling the curtain shut to trap what little warmth your body can muster. This, after all, was the entire point of a canopy bed, not just decoration, but insulation. Those heavy curtains serve as the medieval version of double glazing, sealing in breath and body heat, blocking the chill that creeps in from stone walls and shuttered windows. It works, to a degree. The air inside the curtain enclosure is thicker, stiller, less biting, but it's not what you'd call warm. Your feet remain numb, your fingertips tingle, and every time you shift, the sheets steal more heat from your skin. You begin to understand why some nobles went to bed fully dressed. Night clothes weren't always the white linen gowns you imagine from storybooks. Often people slept in their underclothes, stockings, or even cloaks. The wealthiest might have a quilted nightshirt, thick and padded, stitched in diamond patterns like a miniature jacket. But even that didn't guarantee comfort. In some regions, noble women slept with small dogs, not for company, but for warmth. A little hound tucked under the covers was like a living heat stone. And unlike actual heat stones, dogs didn't crack or go cold after an hour. You don't have a dog, but you do have that fire across the room. You can hear it now. The hiss and pop of sap in the logs, the occasional shift of a log as it settles. You want to leave the bed and move closer, maybe sit on the hearthstones and thaw your toes, but that would mean getting up. And getting up means facing the air outside the bed curtains, a decision no one takes lightly at this hour. So you stay where you are, swaddled like a parcel, listening to the castle breathe. You notice now how much noise a supposedly silent place can make. Wind scratching at the shutters, wood beams groaning as they adjust to the night's temperature, a drip in the corner, slow and steady. Castles are alive at night, in their own creaking, sighing, whispering way. You hear footsteps, not near but distant, somewhere down the hall, on the floorboards beyond the Lord's chamber. Someone is still awake, or perhaps it's the guard changing watch, or perhaps, your mind suggests unhelpfully, it's the echoes of 100 nights before, carried on stone and memory. But your eyes are heavy now. The velvet curtain traps your breath, your warmth, your thoughts. The mattress is finally yielding. You begin to sink, not just into the bed, but into something quieter, slower. And as you drift, you wonder, did the Lord sleep any better than his servants? Did his shoulders ache too? Did he dream of summer meadows and open skies just like you? You'll never know, but tonight you sleep where he slept, under the same beams, beside the same fire, with the same cold air pressing at the edges of the bed curtain, and as your thoughts blur, into dreams you realise something true and ancient and odd. Even in a castle, sleep was never guaranteed. Tonight, you're not in a bedchamber. You're not even in a room. You're sleeping where the majority of people in the castle actually did, on the floor of the great hall. It's a vast space by day, where meals are served and announcements made, where the Lord holds court and minstrels play. But by night, the tapestries along the walls do little to hide the fact that it's just a cavernous box of cold stone, stretching up toward a timbered ceiling lost in shadow. You shuffle across the flagstones following the others. Some carry bundles of straw, some old cloaks, some nothing at all. No one speaks. They've all done this before. By the hearth, now reduced to a smouldering bed of embers, you find a patch of floor not already claimed. It's near enough to the dying fire that you can feel a whisper of warmth. But that spot comes at a price. It's loud. Everyone wants to be near the fire. There are at least 20 people here. Men, women, a couple of servants with their heads already down, an older man whose cough rattles in the rafters. Someone steps over your feet with a muttered apology and curls up beside you. You spread out your borrowed blanket, thin and riddled with patches, and settle in. No mattress tonight, just rushes scattered on the flagstone with a few fresh herbs mixed in, marjoram maybe or thyme, intended to mask the smell of the day's meals and spilled ale. You can still catch the scent of roasted meat clinging to the air, faint and greasy. To your left, someone snores immediately. To your right, a boy whispers to himself, counting something. Maybe sheep, maybe days since his last warm night. You're not sure, but he stops around 17. You lie back and stare upward. The beams vanish into darkness. Somewhere above, a draught slips through where the roof doesn't quite meet the wall. You can't see it, but you feel it. A cool brush along your cheek, like fingers dragging across your face. The fire pops, a spark flies, and someone yelps as it lands too close. Welcome to communal sleep in the medieval hall. Noisy, restless, and necessary. This was how most of the castle's residents slept. Guards off shift, kitchen helpers done for the day, pages, squires, visitors, hired labourers. Unless you were noble, titled or favoured, you were on the floor. Sometimes the Lord's own children would sleep down here, especially in winter when the upper rooms became too cold to bear. All bodies together meant shared warmth. And that warmth, for all its discomforts, might just save your life on the coldest nights. You curl into yourself, trying to take up as little space as possible. Your elbow bumps someone's shoulder. A foot rests briefly on your knee before adjusting. No one apologizes. No one complains. This is how it works. You wonder how many people have slept on this very patch of stone. Hundreds, thousands. How many dreams soaked into this floor? How many chills? How many secrets? How many moments of quiet? Heartbreak in the dark? And now you're one of them. You try not to move. Every shift risks brushing against someone else. Elbow to ribs, shoulder to back, knee to spine. There's no such thing as personal space here. You're wedged between two strangers, their breath warming your neck and your blanket shared in awkward, silent truce. The body to your left radiates heat but also snores violently, like a forge bellows working overtime. The person to your right fidgets in their sleep, murmuring words you can't make out. You don't dare move away. The farther from others, the colder it gets, and out here, warmth is a communal currency. Above, the rafters groan. You flinch instinctively, but the others don't. They're used to the timbers complaining, used to the scratch of mice overhead, and the soft patter of something scurrying behind the tapestries. You tuck your chin down, breathe into the crook of your elbow, and try to ignore the itch rising on your back. It might be straw dust, or it might be the first sign of something else. Lice, maybe, or fleas. The rushes on the floor aren't changed often, and even when they are, the pests know how to wait. One man across the room rolls over and pulls something from under his blanket. A dog. Small, wiry, loyal. It curls into his chest and he sighs like someone sinking into a featherbed. You envy him for a moment. That mutt is probably the warmest thing in the castle tonight. Someone farts. It echoes across the hall. A few chuckles ripple through the sleepers. Sleep hasn't yet dulled all their senses. Then the stillness returns. A cough, a snore, a shift of cloth, but mostly stillness. You'd think with all these people it would feel safer, but in truth, it makes sleep lighter. There's always someone stirring, someone standing up to relieve themselves in a corner, someone murmuring a half-forgotten prayer into the dark. You half expect to be stepped on. It's happened before. One poor kitchen boy last week walked across 3 sleepers before finding his blanket. No one held it against him. You don't navigate a room like this with dignity. You do it with your hands outstretched, hoping not to land on a face. Your cheek is pressed now against the stone, only half padded by the rushes. The chill seeps through. Your joints begin to ache. Not the sharp pain of injury, but the dull throb of cold that settles in your bones like a story passed down through generations. A woman near the hearth mumbles in her sleep. She clutches a small pouch to her chest, fingers white-knuckled. You wonder what's in it. A charm, a keepsake, dried herbs to guard against fever. People believed in many things to survive the cold. Prayers, trinkets, whispered spells. You try not to think too hard. The body heat is helping. Barely. You're not warm, but you're not freezing either. You lie still and wait for the world to slow down, for these sounds to blur into fog. And slowly, quietly, they do. In the heart of a crowded, freezing hall, your eyes close. Not because you're ready, but because your body is done fighting. It slips away into sleep, not gently, not sweetly, but in sheer exhaustion. And beside you, 20 others do the same. Tonight you've made a rookie mistake. You tried to sleep warm. Sounds smart, doesn't it? After all, that's been your problem since the first night, the endless cold. So you layered up, undershirt, tunic, double wool hose. even a cloak draped across your shoulders. You bundled yourself like a roast waiting for the spit, and now you're sweating. Not a gentle, warm kind of sweat, but the clammy, creeping kind that seeps into every fold of fabric and leaves your skin slick beneath the wool. Your back sticks to your tunic, your hair clings to your forehead, and worst of all, the chill hasn't gone away. It's just lurking under the surface, waiting for your body to cool. Here's the terrible truth they don't tell you. In the medieval world, warmth could kill. It wasn't the heat itself, it was what came after. If you sweated through your layers and then drifted off, you'd wake soaked and freezing. Your own body a sponge for illness. And illness came easily in a place like this. The very same chill that made you pile on clothes now turned your sweat into poison. Even nobles weren't safe. There are records of lords and ladies falling ill after retiring in too many layers, or under too many furs. Once asleep they overheated, sweated, then froze by dawn. Fever followed, sometimes death. You sit up, pulling at the layers around your neck. The air on your skin is sharp, almost welcome. You peel back one hose, then the next. You remove your cloak and use it instead as a blanket. You're learning now, sleeping warm isn't about piling on. It's about trapping heat, then staying dry. Some servants in the castle have their own tricks. They rub their feet with garlic or onion oil to stimulate warmth, or wrap them in cabbage leaves. You thought they were joking. Now, you're not so sure. You glance at the others around you. One man sleeps in a thin tunic, but his cloak is tucked expertly over his chest and feet, forming a kind of cocoon. Another has curled beside a stone wall, using the retained heat from the hearth's outer masonry. Clever. You're learning. Slowly. But you're not out of trouble yet. Your damp skin begins to cool, and that's when the shivers start. Violent, jerking shivers that make your teeth knock and your knees clench. The blanket feels useless now. The heat you created earlier has betrayed you, turned against you like an angry pet. You try to dry yourself with the hem of your cloak. It helps, a little. But the real solution is time. Time and stillness. If you can just get through this phase, just stay calm, your body will settle. You lie back, careful this time. Arms across your chest, legs curled, cloak draped with space to breathe. You close your eyes and focus on breathing, willing the heat to return. Not in sweat, but in steady, honest warmth. This is the paradox of medieval sleep. Sometimes the pursuit of warmth brings you closer to danger than the cold itself ever did. You try not to panic. The shivers that rack your body aren't just uncomfortable. They're a warning. You're wet, you're cooling too fast, and there's no heated blanket or modern fix coming to save you. You shift under your cloak, peel away the dampest layer of linen beneath your tunic, and wring it out in the dark. It clings like seaweed. You lie back, keeping your knees bent close, and press your arms tight against your ribs. Every movement matters now. Generate heat, don't lose it. Your only consolation, you're not alone. Everyone in this castle has learned the hard way that there's a fine line between staying warm and getting sick. One day you bundle too tight, the next you're coughing up phlegm and praying it's not the kind of chill that settles into your lungs for the winter. One of the castle's stewards, a man in his 40s with shoulders like a butcher's block, once told you he sleeps in nothing but his tunic. Better to shiver than sweat, he said with a shrug. Then he bit into a raw onion like it was an apple. The cold here doesn't reward cleverness. It rewards humility. You can't fight it head on. You adapt. You balance. You adjust your cloak again, this time leaving a small opening near your chest to vent the trapped humidity. You let your breath fill the space under the blanket like a furnace. Slow, steady puffs that warm your skin by degrees. You keep your limbs close, minimizing surface area exposed to air. This is the kind of knowledge people in the Middle Ages didn't write down. It was passed person to person, mother to daughter, apprentice to journeyman. How to sleep without getting sick, how to wake without coughing, how to live through 100 frozen nights without a single flame nearby. They didn't have thermometers, but they knew the signs: blue lips, slowed speech, glassy eyes. They'd roll someone over and rub their arms, not to comfort, but to keep their blood moving. Sometimes they'd tuck the freezing one between two warm bodies, skin to skin. Not intimacy, necessity. And not everyone made it through the winter. Cold wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a killer. Quiet, creeping, unrelenting. You look at your own fingers now, still pale but not stiff. Good. You flex them. Still working. Your breath comes easier. You've stabilized. Your cloak is drying against your body heat. Your layers are no longer pressing damp against your ribs. The shivers slow. Not gone, but bearable. And somewhere in the dark you realize you've passed a kind of test. Not one of strength, but of stillness. You've learned what generations before you knew by heart. That survival in the night doesn't come from fighting the cold. It comes from outlasting it. Tonight, you're promised a fire. Not a great hall inferno or a nobleman's hearth. Just a brazier. A small metal stand, knee-high, with glowing coals inside radiating heat in a slow, quiet way. It's the kind of thing you've dreamed of for 6 nights straight. Warmth that doesn't fade within minutes. Heat that doesn't need to be shared with 15 other bodies. You're assigned a narrow room just off the corridor that leads toward the kitchens. The stone walls still breathe cold, but less aggressively here. And in the centre of the room, atop a scorched patch of floor, sits the brazier. A servant has already lit it. The coals glow orange, the iron legs creak faintly in the warmth, and for the first time in days, you feel something close to hope. You press your hands near the rim, not too close, just enough to feel the life return to your knuckles. Your fingers tingle with pins and needles. It's like greeting an old friend who you thought had died. You let the warmth soak in. This might be the best night yet. You spread your bedding around the brazier like a sun worshipper staking claim to the perfect patch of sand. Others have the same idea. There are 3 of you in the room, maybe 4. No one speaks. You all know what's at stake. Silence keeps the illusion sacred. You lie down on your pallet, cloak pulled over your chest, and for once you can stretch your legs without curling into a shiver. The fire licks at the cold air, and you begin to believe sleep might come easily. But the brazier has its own danger. You remember what the old man in the hall whispered last night. Too close to the coals, and you'll never wake up. He didn't mean you'd burn. He meant the smoke. Braziers use charcoal, and charcoal, when burning in a poorly ventilated space, can release carbon monoxide. Deadly, scentless, invisible. There are stories passed through castle corridors of servants found cold and grey in the morning, their faces calm, their bodies stiff. Not from the chill, but from the very warmth they sought. That's the medieval gamble. You either freeze or you risk suffocating in your sleep. There's a slit window in the wall, thankfully. It doesn't close, but in this case you're glad. The breeze cuts the warmth, yes, but it also keeps the air moving. You watch it flutter the flame slightly, a breath from the outside world. Still, you shift your bedding a few feet away from the brazier just in case. You angle your body so your face is toward the window. It's not comfortable, but then again, neither is dying. You glance around the room. One of your fellow sleepers is already out, a gentle snore rising and falling like a slow tide. Another lies still, eyes closed but muscles tense, someone still learning to trust the fire. You get it. You're not there yet either. You close your eyes. The coals crack softly, the breeze cools your forehead, and for the first time the air doesn't bite, it lulls. The fire hums behind your closed eyes. You feel it more than hear it, a pulse of warmth, rhythmic and steady like a slow heartbeat for the room itself. For once, your limbs aren't clenched tight to your body. You've uncurled, you've let your arms rest freely. This is as close as you've come to peace since the first night you stepped into the castle, but the fire makes you wary. You open one eye and glance at the brazier, still glowing, still quiet. But memory whispers of danger. Stories float through your mind. True or exaggerated, it doesn't matter now. A guard who fell asleep too close to a coal pan and never woke. A noblewoman who asked her maid to stoke the brazier in the night and was found lifeless by morning, her lips blue despite the warmth. You shift back slightly. You'd rather shiver a little than never wake up at all. The air has changed. The room is no longer bitterly cold. It's mixed now. Layers of warm and cool like ripples in water. The breeze from the slit window slides over your face while your toes bask in the fire's glow. It's not balance, but it's livable. And yet, sleep doesn't come as easily as you'd hoped. The warmth lulls, yes, but it also heightens your awareness. You notice things you never did in the cold. The scratches in the stone beneath your blanket, the smell of singed wool in the air, the crackle pop of a coal splitting under heat, sending a tiny spark upward. You roll onto your back and stare at the low ceiling. Shadows flicker there, soft, jittery like dancers in a fever dream. They don't bother you. In fact, they're oddly calming. You start to drift, watching them blur and stretch, a shadow theatre performance just for you. Then, a voice, a quiet whisper from the corner of the room, one of the others, talking in his sleep. The words are slurred, half-formed. You can't make them out. But it's a man's voice, soft, old, repeating something. You listen closer. "Don't close the door." He says it again, clearer. Then silence. You don't move. You don't want to disturb whatever bargain has been struck between warmth and night. You turn slightly, back toward the fire. The coals are dimmer now, still orange, but lower, settled. Their life is steady, not dangerous yet. But this is another thing you've learned. The fire is never still. It breathes, it changes, it demands attention. And that's why, in most medieval castles, the braziers were never left unattended. Servants watched them, guards rotated beside them. A smouldering pan was both comfort and curse. You curl tighter beneath your cloak, now dry from earlier. Your socks are warm, your chest no longer aches with cold, and for the first time in many nights your thoughts drift, not to discomfort, not to pain, but to dreams. You dream of summer, of hay fields, of lying in tall grass with the sun on your face and no stone under your back. You dream of warmth that doesn't hiss or crackle, of air that doesn't cut. And in the corner, the brazier whispers like an old friend, "I am here, but not forever." By now, you've noticed a curious trend in these castles. The most prized possession in any sleeping chamber isn't a soft mattress or a fire, or even the bed itself. It's the curtain. Thick, heavy, clumsy things, dragged around the bed like a theatrical set. Sometimes made of velvet if you're lucky. More often they're wool or linen, dyed in deep colours, stitched or patched, hanging from iron rods or ropes strung across wooden beams. But no matter their fabric, they serve a single purpose: to trap what little heat your body can produce. Tonight you sleep in a narrow room that used to belong to the steward's assistant. It has a proper bed, small but raised, and it has, miraculously, bed curtains. You didn't appreciate the idea of curtains until you tug them closed and feel the difference immediately. The outside air vanishes. The flickering torchlight is swallowed. The sound of footsteps down the hall is dulled. Inside this tiny world of cloth, you've created a bubble of warmth and stillness. Your breath bounces back. Your blanket holds its temperature. And though the stone wall beside your bed is still radiating cold like the inside of a cellar, the curtain holds that cold at bay like a reluctant servant. People often think medieval curtains were for privacy. That's partially true. But the real reason they were so widespread in sleeping quarters was insulation. There was no central heating, no sealed windows, no weatherproof anything. So when a room had no fireplace, and most didn't, the only defence was creating a tent around your own body heat. You press your fingers into the wool blanket beneath your chin and listen. The castle beyond the curtain breathes as it always does. Wind through corridors, faint creaks of wood, occasional groans of stone contracting in the cold. But inside your small curtained world, those sounds feel far away, like weather outside a cave. Some people sewed charms into the seams of their bed curtains, bits of ribbon, dried herbs, tiny bells to ward off nightmares. One woman even embroidered a single phrase across the inner hem, "The night is not mine." A reminder, perhaps, that the darkness belongs to no one, that all you can do is survive until dawn. You tug the curtain tighter. The inside smells faintly of old soap and dust. Not unpleasant, just lived in. This curtain has seen winters. It has trapped coughs and prayers and dreams. You begin to feel something strange. Not comfort, but shelter. You shift your legs and find that the mattress is feather-stuffed, or at least partially. There's give beneath you. No straw tonight, no rustling, no prickly bits stabbing your thighs. The heat rises slowly, and you exhale into the darkness. Here, in the heart of a stone fortress, you have found something as close to warmth as you're going to get. All thanks to a rectangle of wool on a crooked rod. The curtain holds. You feel it guarding your world, heavy and still, like a woolen shield. Between you and everything else, the cold air no longer drifts across your face. The draughts that haunted you in the halls, the stone breath of the castle walls, all of it is muffled now. For once the night feels paused. You breathe out and watch the darkness in front of your eyes. It's not total blackness. There's a faint shimmer where your breath catches the last bits of warmth. You're surprised by how much heat your own body can make once it's given a chance to stay in one place. Curtains, in this era, are what glass is to us now. Protection, separation. Not quite silence, not quite warmth, but close enough. In wealthier homes, entire beds were designed as box beds, with panels and doors that closed off the sleeper entirely. Little sleeping closets inside your own room, sometimes even shared between family members. One entrance, one mattress, no windows. There's a reason for all of it. You realise that now. The people who built these castles, who lived and shivered and sweated in them, didn't waste time on decoration. Every item had a purpose. The curtain, not for vanity, for warmth, for health, for life. You shift slightly in your bed and the fabric sways. The motion feels personal, like the curtain is listening. It creaks faintly at its rings but stays closed. You begin to understand why some sleepers grew attached to theirs, talk to them even. In cold nights like this, your bed curtain is the only wall you can control. It can't keep out fate, or illness, or war, but it can keep out the draft from the arrow slit, and sometimes that's enough. There's an odd comfort in hearing the castle continue without you. The footsteps, the clang of a dropped ladle in the kitchen below, the dull thud of a closing door, all muted by layers of linen and wool. You don't have to respond to any of it. You're sealed off in a warm cave barely big enough to roll over in. and just when you're almost asleep, a faint memory returns. A story the laundress told by the fireside last week. About a lady who stitched her bed curtains so tightly shut in winter that she once slept straight through a fire in the next room. The flames never reached her, but the smoke did. She was pulled out, coughing and covered in soot. Her first question, "Did the curtains burn?" You smile faintly in the dark. There's something absurd and perfect about it. Because yes, in the cold, stone, sleepless world of medieval castles, a curtain might be the most loyal thing you own. You close your eyes again. The fabric brushes your cheek. The sounds of the outside world soften. And for a few precious hours, you are your own small universe, cradled in 4 heavy folds of cloth. The trouble with nighttime, even after you've mastered the curtain trick, even after you've learned not to overdress or oversweat, is that your body has needs. And tonight, your body chooses to need the privy. You lie there for a few miserable minutes, hoping the sensation will go away. It doesn't. You try to reason with yourself. Maybe you can sleep through it. Maybe your body will forget. But your bladder, like the cold stone walls around you, is merciless and unmoved by optimism. You peel back your bed curtain. Immediately a wave of cold air slaps your face. The warmth you built up over hours rushes away like spilled wine. You sit upright, cloak already on your shoulders, wool socks dragging against the cold floor as you swing your feet over the edge of the bed. The hallway's darker than you expected. The torchlight barely reaches here. You squint into the gloom, wondering how many others have made this same walk tonight. Privies in castles aren't just inconvenient, they're strategically inconvenient. Built into the outer walls, usually at the edge of a tower, they were designed to drop waste directly outside the keep. Hygienic in theory. Brutal in practice. You'll have to walk down 2 hallways, past the outer stairs, and stand over a hole in the floor that empties into the freezing abyss. You move quietly, not because you're being watched, but because the castle has trained you to be small after dark. Your footsteps echo. You pull your cloak tighter. In some castles, there are chamber pots, ceramic or metal bowls you can use without leaving the bedchamber. The nobility, especially, kept one under the bed or in a small cabinet. But servants and guests like you, you're expected to take the walk. You reach the outer corridor. The cold here is sharper, less stagnant. It moves. You can feel the draft sliding past your ankles and under your sleeves. The arrow slits along the wall are open, as always, and somewhere below, the wind howls like a creature trying to claw its way inside. You finally reach the privy. It's not a room. It's more like a cubby carved into the wall. The wooden seat is worn smooth, and the stone around it is slick from centuries of use. You hesitate before sitting, knowing full well that it will feel like placing your skin on an ice block. You sit anyway. The relief is immediate. The regret follows half a second later. A gust of wind pushes through the shaft straight up from the drop beneath. It's not just cold, it's cruel. You grit your teeth, eyes watering, and try to focus on anything else. On the grooves in the stone, on the way your breath curls into mist, on the thought that somewhere, far away, people sleep through the night without ever needing to do this. When you're finished, you stand quickly, pull your cloak tighter, and begin the long, freezing walk back. The air feels colder now. Maybe it's just that you left your bubble of warmth behind. The bed won't feel the same when you return. But that's the rule of castle sleeping. Once you step out, you start from zero. You return to your chamber, breath puffing out in white bursts, cloak clutched tight at the collar. The stone corridor behind you groans as the wind slides along its length like a sigh. The torch in its bracket has dimmed. Just a thin flame now, flickering with exhaustion, like it's as tired of the cold as you are. You reach your bed and stare at the curtains. They're still closed, but they look different now. Less like shelter, more like a gate you've foolishly stepped beyond. You pull them apart and slide back in. It's exactly as you feared. The heat is gone. The warmth you built over hours, the breathing, the curled limbs, the shared temperature of blanket and skin, dissolved the moment you open the curtain. Now the sheets are cold again. The mattress, once soft and neutral, feels clammy. Your own body has cooled from the journey, and when you lie down it feels like placing your chest against a tomb. You grit your teeth and pull the covers back up, knowing the drill. Start over. Curl tight. Breathe deep. Hope the shivers pass quickly. It's one of the great ironies of castle life. People feared the cold more than the dark. The dark you could live with. The cold, that could change the course of your whole season. One bad night could turn into a week-long illness, a wheeze in the chest that lingered until the spring thaw. And the trip to the privy was a common culprit. Some tried to avoid it altogether. There were people who trained themselves to hold it through the night, no matter how much they drank. Others used makeshift chamber pots, buckets, bowls, even old jugs, hidden beneath bedding or behind a curtain. But the smell lingered, and if you shared your chamber with anyone else, you'd be the subject of wrinkled noses and muttered gossip until next week's feast. You lie still now, your fingers tucked beneath your knees, your breath carefully measured. Slowly, the edge of the cold wears off. The heat returns not as a wave, but as a whisper. A hint of warmth at the soles of your feet. The blanket begins to insulate again, and the mattress stops biting. You promise yourself, next time you won't wait. You'll go before bed, or maybe you'll find a pot and keep it close, like the clever maidservants do, stacked beside the laundry, hidden behind the bed leg. You close your eyes. The curtain no longer rustles. The wind outside is just a murmur. The mattress, though still chilled, is tolerable. And your body, wiser now, heavier, begins to settle again. This is what sleep becomes in a medieval castle. Not a long, luxurious escape, but a process of reclaiming what the cold keeps trying to steal. And tonight, you've just won one small piece of it back. Tonight, you're not sleeping alone, and not by choice. The chamber is crowded, the beds are few, and you've been assigned to share one. Not a mattress beside someone, not two pallets side by side. One bed, one blanket, two people. This isn't unusual in the castle, it's the norm. Nobles, servants, travellers, all of them did it. If you think beds were private, personal sanctuaries in the Middle Ages, think again. A bed was often a shared space, a heat strategy, and occasionally a battlefield. Your bedmate tonight is a baker's assistant. You've seen him before in the mornings, arms dusted with flour, shirt always half unlaced, humming through his chores. You nod awkwardly as you both take your places. No words are exchanged, just a brief glance that says, "Let's get through this quietly." You slide under the covers first. The blanket is warm in patches, damp in others. It smells faintly of yeast and sweat. He follows after you, careful not to touch at first, then eventually giving in to the closeness the cold demands. Your shoulders touch, then your legs, and then, unavoidably, your feet. And here's the thing no one tells you. Shared warmth is not always comfortable warmth. His breath hits the back of your neck. He shifts, causing the blanket to pull slightly off your shoulder. You pull it back. He exhales sharply through his nose, not in anger, just tired. Sleeping beside someone you don't know is a strange intimacy. There are no introductions, no rules. You learn each other's rhythms by feel, not conversation. His breathing evens out. Yours mimics it. You adjust to the space he takes. He does the same, but it's never quite restful. You lie awake, one eye half open, aware of every twitch. Every time he moves, you brace for it. Will he roll toward you, pull the blanket too far, steal your warmth? There are stories of castle staff who slept 5 or 6 to a bed, apprentices curled together like spoons in a drawer, whole families sharing a mattress in a servant's chamber. There was no shame in it. It was necessity. Skin next to skin, body heat shared, no questions asked. Still, you're learning the limits. His foot kicks against yours. You shift. He mumbles something. Half a word, maybe a name. You wonder who he's dreaming of. The bed itself is narrow. Made for 1, used by 2. Every inch matters. You find yourself clinging to the edge, your hip dangling off the side, one elbow jammed between the mattress and the bed frame. And yet, if you move too far, the cold rushes in like a punishment. You try not to think about what it means to be this close to a stranger. You focus instead on the sound of his breathing, steady now, on the rhythm of the wind against the shutters, on the fact that, for all its awkwardness, the bed is warm, and that might be enough. The night wears on. The bed doesn't get any bigger, and your bedmate doesn't get any smaller. At some point, the two of you find an uneasy truce, back to back, like 2 peas in a pod that never agreed to be roommates. It's a practical arrangement. Your spines create a wall of heat. No faces, no awkward eye contact, just shared breath on opposite ends of the blanket. And in this moment, you understand why people did this for centuries. Not for comfort, for survival. You start to doze, briefly, shallowly, until your bedmate turns over. The motion pulls the blanket and lets in a cruel streak of cold. You both jolt a little, mumble apologies neither of you finish, and settle back in. He shifts closer, his arm brushes yours. Now it's your turn to be the wall. This kind of sleep doesn't come with dreams. It's a negotiation. You give up one thing, space, modesty, peace, and get another, warmth. In wealthier households, bed sharing wasn't just practical, it was political. Pages slept with their lords to be ready for orders at dawn. Knights shared beds on campaign for body heat. Even kings shared with other noblemen during travels, not out of preference, but because even royal castles could be short on rooms. There's a famous story of 2 noblemen forced to share a bed at a winter court. One awoke with the other's cold foot planted squarely on his stomach. He wrote a letter about it. It became gossip. But no one questioned why they'd shared the bed. That part was understood. You, meanwhile, are still wide awake. The baker's assistant snores now, a low, stuttering rasp. You try to ignore it, but it vibrates against your spine. You count backwards from 100. It's a trick someone taught you on the first night. You've never made it past 72, 71, 70. You think about the bed itself. A simple thing. Wooden frame, rope-laced base, and a mattress of stuffed straw, or, if you're lucky, wool. Nothing fancy. But it holds 2 people who would otherwise be curled up in corners of the cold hall. It's easy to take that for granted until you've slept on bare stone. 65, 64, you start to feel your limbs soften, your breath slows, the snoring fades to a dull rhythm, not pleasant, not peaceful, but expected. And in this, your 10th night, you come to an odd realization. Sleep in a medieval castle isn't a solitary act. It's collective, communal, negotiated in silence and tolerated in discomfort. Your body might resist it, but your survival depends on learning the rhythm of others. Tonight, you learn it again. You shift once more, shoulder to shoulder with a stranger, breathing the same cold air. And slowly, quietly, you both drift into that shared space where sleep finally lives. You wake scratching, It starts at your wrist, an itch just beneath the edge of your linen sleeve. You think nothing of it until it spreads to your neck, then your scalp, then both ankles. You sit up, half swaddled in blankets, and scratch harder, trying not to wake anyone else in the chamber. But it's too late. You know what this is. You've met your newest and least welcome bedfellows. Fleas. They don't announce themselves with a dramatic entrance. No scurrying across the floor, no squeaking. Just pinpricks, itching. Welts that weren't there when you went to sleep, and they never come alone. You toss back the blanket. It's still warm, but now it feels like a trap. You peel off your outer layer and examine the seams. Nothing at first, but then a tiny speck jumping. Flea. And once you see one, you can't stop seeing them. You know they're in the mattress, in the hems of the blanket, in the folds of the curtain you praised just hours ago. You remember now, heat doesn't just attract humans. It attracts every living thing that feeds on them. Medieval beds, no matter how fine, were rarely clean by our standards. Feather mattresses were warm and soft but impossible to wash. The seams held not just feathers but crumbs, hair, flakes of skin, everything a flea could dream of. And it wasn't just fleas. There were lice, living in clothing seams and hair. Bedbugs, hiding in wooden joints of the bed frame. Mites, gnats, even the occasional rat if the chamber was close to the kitchens or storerooms. You glanced toward the foot of the bed. You'd swear the blanket moved just slightly. You decide not to look again. The worst part? No one in the castle is surprised. This is just part of life. You scratch again, harder this time, and feel the telltale sting of broken skin. You'll bleed if you keep going, but the itching won't stop. One of the servants once showed you her ankle, scarred with tiny bites from a night spent sleeping too close to the storage shed. She rubbed it with vinegar and salt, swore by it. Maybe you'll try that tomorrow, if the castle has any vinegar left. Some people kept bundles of dried herbs in their bedding, lavender, pennyroyal, wormwood. Not for scent, but for pest control. The old herbalist swore fleas hated wormwood. Others tried tucking garlic into their pillow. You can still smell it in one of the guest rooms down the hall. You stare at your pillow. You don't want to lie back down. But where else would you go? You take a deep breath. You know the answer. Nowhere. The straw mattress beneath you crackles as you shift. You grab your cloak and lay it down first, hoping the outer layer might form a barrier. It won't. But hope is something. You lie back carefully. The itching returns, softer now. The fleas are still here. You feel them, but you don't have the energy to fight them anymore. And somehow, amid the twitching and the scratching, you begin to drift again. In this castle, you don't sleep in peace. You sleep despite everything. You lose track of time, half asleep, half awake, scratching without realizing it. Your fingernails drag lines across your arms, your neck, your ankles. You're not alone in this either. Around you, you hear it. Others shifting, coughing, the occasional faint scratch in the darkness. It's the quiet chorus of a castle after midnight. You remember the steward once saying, "If the fleas don't like you, you're probably already dead." Meant as a joke, but there's truth in it. The castle is crawling with life whether you see it or not. You think of the beds you've slept in so far. Straw sacks, coarse linen, animal hides, even soft feather beds. All of them have their own kinds of unwelcome residents. Fleas preferred straw, lice liked seams. Bedbugs hid in the carved crevices of ornate bed frames, waiting for the warmth of skin. You once saw a man flip his mattress in the barracks, only to find a small army of them beneath, squirming like grains of rice. You shiver, not from cold, but from the thought. You sit up. You check the seams of your tunic, and there they are again. 2, maybe 3, tiny, dark, moving fast. You crush one between your thumb and forefinger. It leaves a tiny smear. You don't know if it was your blood or someone else's. That's the thing about fleas. They don't discriminate. There were treatments back then. Powders made from dried herbs or even crushed shells, meant to be rubbed into sheets or sprinkled on the floor. The truly desperate used quicklime, dangerous stuff, could burn your skin. But when you're covered in bites, even burning sounds like a solution. And then there were the more creative options. One tale from a coastal town spoke of a merchant who trained a weasel to sleep in his bed, said it scared off the rats and ate the fleas. Another woman swore that sleeping with a slice of onion on her chest kept bugs away. Maybe it worked. Maybe she just smelled too bad to be bothered. You reach for your cloak again, this time folding it double and laying it beneath your back. It's not clean, but it's at least yours. Fewer strangers have sweat into it. You close your eyes. The bites itch. They burn. You focus on your breath, on the still air, on the weight of the blanket that now feels both protective and infested. You remind yourself, everyone dealt with this, even the nobles, even the kings. Fleas didn't bow to rank. Even a throne couldn't keep your ankles from being chewed up in your sleep. And yet, people slept. Maybe because they were exhausted. Maybe because they had no choice. You're not sure which one you are tonight. You shift again, adjust your cloak, scratch one last time behind your ear, and drift, finally, into the scratchy, twitching, infuriating sleep that everyone in this stone fortress knows too well. By now, you've tried nearly every sleeping corner this castle has to offer. Stone floors, crowded halls, drafty towers, beds with fleas, beds without blankets. But tonight's rest takes you somewhere different entirely. You've been sent to the monastery. Just past the north wall, tucked behind a hedge of bare-limbed trees, the monks live in a small stone annex, quieter than the castle, colder too. There's no fire here, no laughter, no clatter of boots in the hallway. Only silence. Deliberate. Dense. Like snow pressed against your ears. You step inside just as the last bell rings. The air is motionless. The corridor smells faintly of wax and damp wool. A monk nods toward your sleeping place, and you follow with quiet steps, boots barely scuffing the floor. The dormitory is stark. 12 wooden pallets in a single room. No curtains, no cushions. Each pallet is a plank of wood with a folded cloak upon it. Not a cloak for covering. This is the mattress. You're expected to lie atop it, arms crossed, face up. You hesitate, but no one explains. They don't need to. This is how it's done. Monks sleep in silence, in order, and without excess. No feather beds, no furs, no fires, not out of poverty, out of discipline. Cold is a test. Hardness is clarity. Warmth is a worldly distraction, something to be shed like pride. You lie down on the plank, cloak beneath your spine. Your body reacts immediately. The wood is unyielding, it doesn't creak or bend, it just is. Your shoulder blades ache. Your hips press hard into the surface. But no one else seems bothered. Already the other 11 are still, eyes closed, hands folded neatly across their chests like statues preparing for burial. You try to follow, hands placed, legs straight. The room is too quiet. You can hear your own breath like a drum beat. Your ears adjust, seeking sound, and all they find is a distant drip. Water slipping down a stone wall somewhere deeper in the monastery. There's no blanket. You wrap your arms tighter, trying not to shiver. But the rules are clear. Stillness, silence, suffering if necessary. Some monks wake during the night to pray. It's part of the rhythm here. One long sleep is considered indulgent. Instead, they divide the night, rising at midnight for psalms and scripture. then returning to the plank for what's left. You're not expected to rise with them, but you hear them when they go. Bare feet on cold stone, a murmur of robes, the creak of the chapel door. And then the silence returns. It's a strange kind of cold here, not the violent kind that bites and cuts. This is different, slow, deep, respectful. The monastery doesn't try to freeze you, it simply refuses to warm you. And somehow, your body begins to understand. Your breath evens. The pain in your hips fades to numbness. The plank, once so harsh, now feels steady beneath you. There is no comfort here, but there is peace. You don't dream in the monastery. There's nothing to spark one. No flickering light. No warmth to blur the lines between sleep and story. Just the stillness of stone, the rhythm of your own breathing, and the weight of the cold pressing into every inch of exposed skin. At some point, you wake again, not from noise, but from absence. The monks are gone, their pallets are empty, the room colder without their collective breath. You hear distant chanting, low and echoing through stone hallways. It's the midnight office, the sacred hours before dawn when prayers are offered in darkness. You lie still, unsure if you're meant to rise too, but no one returns for you. You're only a guest here, and even that feels like an exaggeration. You're something smaller, an observer maybe, a shadow in their routine. You sit up, slowly, careful not to make the wooden plank creak. Your back aches, not sharply, but with the deep, familiar stiffness of a body that hasn't been coddled. You pull your cloak tighter and walk softly to the door. The corridor outside is unlit. You follow the sound of voices, melodic, restrained, threading through the arches like the breath of the building itself. The monks are in the chapel, and though you can't see them, you can feel their presence. Each voice is distinct, yet part of a single shape. One body, one prayer, one rhythm. You don't go inside. You stay just near the door, where the faint candlelight touches your toes and you listen. This too is part of sleep here. Not the sleep of escape or forgetting, but of ritual. Even in rest, the body serves a purpose. You begin to understand why the plank didn't seem cruel to them. It wasn't about denial. It was about clarity. Removing the distractions of feather and fire so that only breath, bone, and thought remained. When the chanting fades, you return to your pallet. You lie back down, this time without hesitation. The wood welcomes you in its own indifferent way, cold, hard, but familiar. Your limbs relax faster than they did before. There's nothing to rearrange, no blanket to adjust, no pillow to punch into shape, just your cloak, your breath, and the long night still ahead. Your mind is quieter now. The ache in your shoulders has faded to something tolerable. Your toes still sting, but you stop bracing against it. You just let them sting. And in this strange, stripped-down space, where the castle's noises are gone and even the fleas seem to have stayed behind, you begin to understand a deeper kind of rest. Not sleep for comfort, sleep for endurance, sleep for humility, sleep that asks nothing but stillness in return. You close your eyes, no dreams, just the cold, and a kind of peace you didn't know you were looking for. You leave the monastery before dawn. The cold outside bites sharper than anything you felt on the wooden plank, but your body is steadier now. It's as if the silence of that stone room has stitched itself into your bones. You cross the frost-covered courtyard without speaking, breath visible in short, even puffs, and re-enter the castle through the servants' passage near the kitchen. Inside, the warmth is jarring. Not warm by modern standards, but compared to the monastery, the castle now feels humid, close. The rush-covered floors have been swept. The hearth in the kitchen glows softly with leftover embers. A pot of something, oats or cabbage or both, simmers quietly, watched by no one. It's still too early for activity, but the castle is beginning to stir. You're sent to sleep in the chamber above the buttery, a room not often used except in the deepest parts of winter. They say it holds heat well. You hope they're right. You find it tucked between two thick walls with only one small window shuttered tight. No fire, no brazier. But the ceiling is low and the stone is dry. Already, that feels like an advantage. You lie down on a woven mat beside a basket of linens, hoping the stored fabric might share its warmth. The scent is familiar, stale lavender, sweat, maybe a hint of lard soap. It's not clean, but it's not foul either, just lived in. And for a moment, you let yourself hope. Maybe tonight, finally, you'll sleep without interruption. But your throat starts to itch. You cough, once, then twice. The kind of cough that scrapes from deep inside, leaving your chest buzzing. You roll to your side and try to swallow it down, but your breath whistles faintly through your nose, and you realise something's off. The cold has caught you. It was always going to happen, wasn't it? 10 nights of drafts, of sweat then freeze, of midnight runs down stone corridors and damp wool cloaks pulled over damp skin. You don't need a diagnosis. You can feel it in your joints, in your sinuses, in the way your forehead tightens when you breathe too deep. The servants call it bed fever. Others call it night cough. It doesn't matter. Everyone gets it. You sit up slowly, head heavy, your neck is stiff. When you shift your weight, your spine pops like kindling. You reach for your water flask and sip, but it's lukewarm and metallic. The tightness in your throat remains. There's no physician coming, no tonic, no warm towel. In the Middle Ages, sickness wasn't something you treated. It was something you endured. You lie back, pulse steady but shallow. Outside the door, someone passes with a pile of folded linens. You don't call out. You don't want to share the sickness, and you don't want the embarrassment of needing help. Not for a cough. Instead, you cover yourself in a borrowed sheet and curl up in the most protected way you know. Knees tucked, hands beneath armpits, breath slow and shallow. Your body shivers, not from temperature now, but from within. You close your eyes and wait once again for sleep, not to rest, but to escape. You drift in and out of something that only loosely qualifies as sleep, more like a fevered doze, your body floating just beneath wakefulness, pinned down by a cough that won't settle and a chill that clings no matter how tightly you pull the sheet. Your joints ache, your skin prickles, and every time you turn, the mat beneath you reminds you how thin the barrier is between your body and the cold floor. No softness, no sympathy, just stone and straw in your own stubborn lungs. You lose track of time. Minutes melt into hours. Someone enters the room at some point, rustling through the linen baskets. They don't speak. They don't linger. They assume you're sleeping, or at least pretending well enough not to be disturbed. You cough again, deeper now, and feel the weight of it behind your ribs. That's the danger of nights like these. Not the first cold, not the first shiver, but the string of nights that wear you down until the body can't bounce back. There's no physician on call in a castle, not unless you're a noble, and even then you're likely to be handed a cup of spiced wine, a linen rag soaked in vinegar, or worse, a recommendation to bleed out the fever. You think of the others you've seen this week. The stable boy who now wheezes when he walks, the cook who's wrapped her neck in flannel and speaks only in whispers, the knight who limps after sleeping on wet straw during a patrol. The castle doesn't stop for illness. It absorbs it, carries it like a draught through the halls. You pull the sheet tighter and feel the dampness of your own breath collecting beneath it. Not from sweat this time, from the fever rising in your chest. Still, you don't get up. There's nowhere else to go. You begin to understand why medieval people feared the night, not for darkness, not for monsters, but for what the cold could pull from you in silence. A healthy body at dusk could be a coughing wreck by dawn. A small chill could become a season's worth of pain. You close your eyes again and drift deeper, pulled not by comfort, but by exhaustion. Your dreams are strange, twisting, feverish fragments of stone corridors, of endless winding stairs, of wind-rattling shutters that won't stay shut. Somewhere in the haze you hear a bell toll. You open your eyes just enough to see the grey light of morning pressing through the shutter slats. Another night survived, but this one has left its mark. You cough again and feel it shake your entire frame. No blood, not yet. But your chest aches now, not from cold, not from fear, from the long, slow weight of the castle pressing in with every breath. And still, despite it all, you pull the linen tighter, curl inward, and let your body rest a little longer. 'Cause when warmth is rare and healing is slow, sometimes the best thing you can do is nothing. They say cold teaches you things. After nearly 2 weeks in the castle, you start to believe it. Tonight, you're not given a room or a corner, you're given options, a rare thing. The head servant, seeing the wear on your face, gestures toward the laundry alcove behind the kitchens. "Warmer," she says, "if you don't mind the smell." You don't. So you duck behind a hanging curtain of damp sheets and towels, into a low-ceilinged space with stone walls stained from decades of steam. The warmth here isn't from a fire, but from human ingenuity. Stone floors warmed from nearby hearths, lingering humidity, and the residual heat of boiling water poured out into the drain earlier in the day. The scent hits you first. Lye, tallow soap, stale fabric, wet wool. Sharp and sour and oddly sweet. Should be unpleasant. But after the dry cold of the monastery and the fetid warmth of the flea-ridden feather beds, this space smells like survival, like effort, like people who found their own ways to push back against the freeze. You lay your pallet near the wall, where the stone still radiates a gentle warmth. Not hot, but enough. And that's when you begin to notice the little things. Details you'd overlooked during nights when you were too cold to think. A girl across the alcove is rubbing a stone against the soles of her feet, massaging warmth into the calluses. A boy near the drain is heating a pebble in a cloth, slipping it under his cloak like a primitive hot water bottle. Another dribbles oil onto his wrists and rubs briskly, whispering something under his breath. A charm? A prayer? None of this is in the manuals. None of it's written down. These are tricks passed hand to hand, whispered between workers, watched and copied in silence. You remember one from earlier that day. The cook's assistant placing a flat brick by the oven, leaving it there all afternoon. "For my feet tonight," she'd said, tapping the stone with her ladle. "Better than a saint's blessing. It stayed with you." So before lying down, you slip off your boots and wedge your damp socks between 2 folds of laundry, already halfway dry from the room's warmth. You sit on your blanket with your cloak around your knees, hands curled in the crook of your arms, and you do something rare. You prepare. For once, you're not collapsing into sleep like someone falling through a trap door. You're building a space, a routine, a resistance. It doesn't make the castle less cold, but it makes you less helpless. The girl with the stone feet lies down. The boy with the heated pebble curls around it. You stretch your legs and nestle your back against a woven sack of folded sheets. The heat holds. You still hear the castle, always the castle. A groan in the beam, a shuffle from the corridor, a gust sneaking through the laundry curtain. But tonight, you're ready. You've learned from the cold. And for the first time, you're not afraid of it. You nestle, Deeper into the warm stone wall, the rhythm of distant kitchen echoes, softening your breath. A ladle clinks into a basin. Cloth slaps onto wood. Somewhere beyond the alcove, boots scuff the floor, too tired to lift. But none of it reaches your bones the way cold used to. Not tonight. You watch the shadows dance across the folds of a hanging sheet, cast by a single dying candle in the corner. Its glow sways gently, like it too is dozing, and in this flicker, something unexpected settles over the space. Not just warmth, but care. That quiet, handmade kind of care that only exists when people teach one another how to endure. You remember an old superstition someone mentioned on your third night, that hanging laundry inside the room trapped bad spirits. That tucked among the linens were not just shirts and bedding, but spells, woven without thread, sealed in the folds. Silly talk maybe, but you believe it now. These sheets aren't just laundry, they're barriers. They're reminders that someone once cleaned them, hung them, smoothed them with calloused hands. That someone lived through nights colder than this and still bothered to fold something straight. A soft cough breaks the quiet. Not yours this time. The boy with the pebbles shifts and coughs again, turning his face into the stone floor to muffle it. You hear the girl rustle her blanket in response. No words are spoken, but the sound of it lingers. That's another thing about this corner of the castle. The rules are different here. No one tells you to be quiet, but everyone is. No one offers you warmth, but everyone shares it. Not openly, not with gestures, but in proximity, in ritual, in example. You stretch your legs beneath the blanket. Your socks are still damp but no longer icy. Your feet tingle slightly, a good sign. The heat from the wall presses gently against your back, and your breathing has slowed into the rhythm of the others around you. 3, 4, 5 slow exhales. Silence. Then again. There's something sacred about this rhythm, something older than the castle itself, a collective sleep built not on comfort but on understanding. No one here has enough, but what they do have, they make useful. A hot pebble, a sack of folded linen, a superstition whispered beside a fire. You feel your muscles release, one at a time. Your cough hasn't returned, at least not yet, and your head rests not on a pillow, but on a pile of rolled laundry that smells faintly of time and lie. You close your eyes, and for the first time, it doesn't feel like surrender. It feels like belonging. Tonight, the fire comes to you, but not as flame. You're handed something rare, a warming pan. At first, it doesn't look like much. Just a shallow metal pan with a hinged lid, long-handled like a saucepan meant for giants. But when one of the older servants opens it and pours in the embers, glowing orange coals from the kitchen hearth, you feel the promise it carries. Heat. Dry. Radiating. Blessed heat. Not smoke, not damp breath, but something clean and contained. They slip it between your sheets before you lie down, moving it slowly back and forth to warm the linen. You can see the faint steam rise as it drives out the moisture clinging to the fabric. It smells of metal and ash and a trace of burnt oil. But to you, it smells like kindness. The servant gives you a nod and withdraws, leaving the pan beneath the covers a moment longer. You wait. You savour the sight of it. The long handle jutting out from the bed, the lid just slightly ajar. You think of all the beds in the castle that will not have this tonight, and you feel a little guilty for being one of the lucky few. When you remove it, carefully using the thick cloth wrap she left, you feel the difference immediately. The bed is warm, not a dream, not a metaphor, truly warm. You slide between the sheets like someone being welcomed home. The mattress hasn't changed, the blanket hasn't grown thicker, but the warmth, that fleeting heat left by metal and ember, changes everything. It holds in your clothes. It lingers on your skin. It's already fading. Yes, but now you know what's possible. Warming pans weren't common, and they weren't always safe. The wealthy had them. Made of brass or copper, polished to gleam, some with holes in the lid to release a gentle waft of warmth, others with solid tops to keep the embers sealed. A careless user might burn the sheets, or themselves. More than one bed caught fire in a moment of forgetfulness, but used properly they were magic. A little breath of hearth, a flicker of domestic luxury, a brief, glorious illusion that winter had finally relented. You curl into the centre of that fleeting heat. It wraps around your stomach, your thighs, your hands, your feet, long punished by nights on cold stone, finally relax. Toes uncurl, heels stop throbbing. You press your hand to the blanket and feel it. The ghost of the warming pan's path. The heat will fade. It always does. But for now you let it trick you. Let it whisper that this night might be different. That sleep might come without a fight. And if that's a lie, you'll gladly believe it. You shift slightly, stretching one leg across the last lingering warmth beneath the blanket. The spot where the warming pan rested still radiates faint heat, like the sun caught in linen. It's fading quickly, but it's enough. Enough to coax your breath into rhythm. Enough to let your muscles loosen, if only a little. You close your eyes and let the memory of heat do the rest. Warming pans were usually reserved for the noble chambers. Down in the servants' quarters they were passed around sparingly, often shared between 5 or 6 beds if they were shared at all. You got lucky tonight. Either someone felt generous or simply forgot to take it back. You wonder what they'll say in the morning. You also wonder who slept with it last. These pans are not just tools, they're hand-me-downs of heat, carriers of warmth that whisper stories from the previous sleeper to the next. You picture someone just like you, cold, coughing, exhausted, curled around this same patch of linen, dreaming of a spring that felt impossibly far. The fire is gone now. What remains is memory and your own body heat doing its best to fill the void. But something is different. You've been reminded of what warmth feels like, and that makes you more determined to preserve it. You tug the blanket tighter beneath your heels. You keep your arms close to your belly, a ball of human embers fighting against the chill. You pull the collar of your cloak over your nose and exhale slowly, warming your own breath before it escapes. Across the room, someone coughs. Another turns in their sleep. The usual nighttime orchestra of minor miseries. But you don't flinch. Tonight, you've been given an edge. Even nobles clung to their warming pans with reverence. Some had 2, one for their feet, one for their sheets. A travelling nobleman once brought a servant whose only job was to warm his bed before he entered it. Can you imagine? A person paid just to guard the illusion of warmth. In a way it makes you laugh, because tonight you feel like royalty, and no one even had to be paid. You roll to your side. Your body has remembered what comfort tastes like, and even in its absence you sleep better for it. Because sometimes the body isn't just warmed by heat. Sometimes it's warmed by hope. Tonight, your sleep comes not with a new bed, nor a warm blanket, nor even the mercy of a full stomach. Tonight, you're given a room in the castle's outer tower. From the outside, it looks picturesque. A round turret with narrow windows and steep stairs winding along the wall. But inside, it's a perfect prison for cold. You step in and your breath fogs instantly. The air feels ancient here, like it hasn't moved in days. The room is small, circular, with stone walls that curve above you into a low arch. There's a tiny arrow slit facing north, wide enough for wind but not light. You reach your fingers toward the wall out of habit and recoil. It's like touching ice. This tower was never meant for comfort. It was built for watching, for defense, for isolation. Sleeping here is a punishment or a mistake. Your bedding is sparse. A straw pallet on the floor, no raised frame. One wool blanket, one rough cloak. That's all. No fire, no brazier. No one else to share the air. You stand in the middle of the room for a while, debating whether to lie down at all. Your knees already ache from the dampness. The cold isn't just a sensation. It's a presence. A living, breathing thing. You feel it around your ankles, in the folds of your sleeves, creeping slowly up your back like frost rising through a wall. Castle architects didn't build for warmth. They built for strength. Thick walls to resist siege, stone floors to survive fire, high ceilings to carry smoke away from the living. Warmth was never part of the equation, and in rooms like this, you realize just how much stone can hate you. You crouch onto the pallet and pull the blanket around you. It smells faintly of mould and old herbs, better than nothing. You curl into yourself, pressing your hands between your thighs, and begin the same ritual you've practiced for 15 nights now. Breathe, tighten, wait. You try not to think about the people who slept here before. Guards, perhaps. A prisoner. A dismissed servant. Whoever it was, they likely lay in the same position. Knees drawn in, back to the wall, ears full of wind. Some people left tokens in tower rooms. A ring, a ribbon, a word scratched into the stone. You search the floor beside your pallet, and sure enough, near the window, there's a crude carving. Just a name, worn illegible, and a single word below it. Cold. You lie back and press your head into the straw. It crackles beneath your scalp. Not loud, just enough to remind you that sleep here is not given. It's stolen. The cold begins to burrow deeper. Your toes feel brittle. Your lips dry out. You resist the urge to exhale beneath the blanket. Too much moisture, and it'll freeze later, turning your cocoon into a trap. And yet, this room teaches you something. Here, in the coldest corner of the castle, you understand what architecture can do to a body. It doesn't need to move, doesn't need to breathe. It just surrounds you, shaping the way you sleep, the way you suffer, the way you survive. Stone doesn't care, but you do. And that's why you'll make it through the night. You lie on your side now, facing the wall. There's no reason to. It offers no warmth, no comfort. But in the absence of anything soft, something solid can feel grounding. The stone is clammy against your shoulder, but it gives you a sense of location, of being somewhere instead of nowhere at all. The air is utterly still, not quiet, still. There's a difference. In the great hall you hear snores, shifting limbs, the occasional whisper. But here in the tower there is only you, and the slow groan of the wind threading through the slit in the wall. It moans gently, not loud, but persistent. A thin, mournful breath that curves through the opening and curls around your face like a question you don't want to answer. You pull the blanket up again, higher this time, even though you know it won't help. The edges are already damp from the humidity of your own breath, but there's no going back. You're too tired to shiver properly. Your body has chosen stillness instead, which is worse. You remember what the steward said 2 nights ago. When you asked why the stone tower always felt colder than anywhere else, he shrugged. Stone holds the past. You thought it was superstition then. Now, you're not so sure. Because in this room, you can feel the past. It clings to the corners like frost. The sadness of long sleepless nights, the aches left by stiff bodies, the quiet miseries pressed into the walls by people who came here last winter, or the winter before, or the one before that. And then your fingers brush something under the straw. At first you flinch, reflex, but then you reach back and pull it out. It's a piece of cloth, folded, faded. a square, maybe torn from a tunic or a shift. There's stitching along the edge, tiny, almost childlike. A red X in thick thread. No message, no initials, just that one mark. You don't know what it meant to whoever left it here, but you understand the need to leave something in the cold, something to say. I was here. I survived. You tuck it into your blanket near your chest, an offering from a stranger in another century. Maybe it helps. Maybe it just gives your hands something to hold. The wind whistles again, the stone hums, and your body gives in, not in defeat, but in understanding. This isn't comfort. This is assurance. This is the shape of sleep in a castle tower. And as your eyes close, you don't dream. You just settle into the cold, into the silence, into a stillness deeper than rest. Because tonight the castle doesn't warm you, but it doesn't break you either. There's something strange about waking in the middle of the night, not because of noise, not because of discomfort, but simply because your body decides it's time. You blink in the dark and realize the room hasn't changed. Still cold, still quiet, the same sheet bunched at your hip, the same straw beneath your back, poking at all the wrong places, yet you're awake, fully, completely. As if this is just another chapter of the night, not an interruption, but an expectation. You're not alone in this. In the Middle Ages, most people didn't sleep in one long stretch. They slept in two distinct phases, first sleep and second sleep. The time between them, the midnight waking, was normal, anticipated. A few hours of rest, a few hours of wakefulness, then sleep again until dawn. You'd heard this before, laughed at it even. Who wants to plan for waking up at midnight? But now you're living it. And strangely, it doesn't feel like a mistake. It feels calm. You sit up slowly, careful not to jostle your bedding. The blanket clings to your shoulder as you stretch, your breath rising in thin clouds in front of your face. The fire from earlier, if there ever was one, is long gone. The cold has returned not with violence but with routine. You glance around the room. The others are still asleep, barely visible in the soft grey murk. One snores gently. Another shifts under their blanket and mumbles something in a dream. But no one stirs like you do. This is your time now. In the past, people used this waking hour to do all sorts of things. Pray, stoke fires, tend to animals, even make love, in households where privacy was rare. Some wrote letters, some simply sat and thought. It wasn't insomnia, it was part of the rhythm of the body, shaped by candlelight and season and silence. You reach for your cloak and pull it around your shoulders. You don't rise, you just sit there, cross-legged, watching the faint light creep through the shutters. It's not dawn, not yet, just the pale glimmer of a moon half hidden behind winter clouds. Your thoughts are clearer than they've been in days. There's something about the in-between hours, the pause between one sleep and the next, that peels away the noise. There are no chores here, no rush, just you, breathing softly, wrapped in wool and shadow. You think of the people in other towers, in the halls, in the monastery. You wonder how many of them are sitting like this right now, wide-eyed and quiet, thinking nothing and everything all at once. Maybe more than you'd guess. You lie back down, not because you're tired again, but because it feels right. Your body has followed a rhythm older than candles, older than castles, a rhythm shaped by night itself. And as your second sleep approaches, slower and deeper than the first, you feel strangely proud. You've stopped fighting the night. Now, you're flowing with it. The second sleep comes differently. It doesn't rush you like the first, with exhaustion dragging your limbs into stillness. No, this one eases in, softly, patiently, like a tide returning to shore. You feel it before it happens, the muscles loosening, the thoughts drifting from sharp edges to soft impressions. There's no dream at first, just weightlessness. Then flickers, flashes of the day behind you, twisted and quieted into fragments. The stairs, the rushes on the floor, someone's voice, now hollow and distant. And above all, that pale moonlight still pressing through the shutters like a hand waiting to be held. You shift in your blanket, careful to preserve the warmth you rebuilt. The others still sleep, their outlines barely visible, like shadows carved into the floor. No one moves now. The castle has gone utterly still, as if it too respects this hidden second half of the night. You'd always thought of sleep as something linear, start to finish, dusk to dawn. But here, in these walls, it's something cyclical, two halves, bound by breath and bone, and in between, a pause long enough for reflection, but short enough for return. You wonder if people slept better then, or worse, or if it was just different. The steward had once told you, during a moment of rare openness, that he often used his midnight hour to recite prayers, not the kind spoken aloud in chapel, but the ones he kept folded in the back of his mind. Names of the dead, names of debts, things he couldn't say in daylight. You never asked what names he whispered, but tonight you whisper one of your own, quietly, not for any god in particular, just for the silence to hear, and the silence answers by holding you. You nestle deeper, and this time, when sleep comes, it stays. This second sleep is heavier, not because you're more tired, but because your body has surrendered in a different way. The cold is still there, yes, but you no longer brace against it. You've let it become part of the bed, part of the rhythm. You dream now, not vividly, but warmly. There's fire in the hearth, not the one you see, but one you remember. A warm hand on your shoulder, a voice you trust, and a floor beneath you that doesn't ache. You don't move in the dream. You just are, and for once, that's enough. By the time a cock crows in the lower yard, long before the sun even touches the stone, your body begins to stir. But gently. There's no alarm, no gasp for breath, no pain in the joints that startles you into motion. Just a slow return to waking, and a strange sense that the night was not endured, but shared. You open your eyes in the dark and see nothing, but you feel something, not cold, not exactly, a presence. There's a hush in the room now, deeper than silence, the kind that makes your skin prickle before your mind can explain why. The others are still asleep, their breathing steady. No one is speaking, no one is moving, and yet something about the air feels wrong, or maybe just thin. You sit up slowly, blanket still clutched at your chest. The fire has long since died. There's no light save the dull glow of the moon filtering in through the tiny window. It casts a single crooked line across the floor, pale, sharp, and stretched like a blade. Your eyes adjust. The shapes around you sharpen. The wooden chest near the foot of your bed. The dip in the mattress where your knee curled for warmth. The unmoving form of the person beside you, still asleep, still breathing. You try to lie back down, but something stops you. You remember suddenly what the blacksmith's wife once whispered during supper, how her son walked in his sleep last winter, wandered all the way to the tower stairs before someone found him standing barefoot on the landing, mumbling at the wall. She said the cold had crept into his bones so deeply it rearranged his dreams, that the castle twisted his sleep like a frost-laced vine. And you realize now, you don't feel awake, you feel adrift, half inside your body, half somewhere else. You press your fingers to your wrist, your pulse is slow, soft, but there. It's not fear that holds you now, it's confusion, not about where you are, but about when you are, because something about this moment feels timeless. The shadows stretch in the wrong direction. The wall looks further away than it did before. You blink, and for a moment, it's as if the stones themselves breathe with you. You shake your head gently and stand. It's a strange choice, but instinctual. You wrap your cloak around your shoulders and step lightly toward the door. It creaks as it opens, louder than you expect. You wince, but no one wakes. The corridor is empty. The torch in the bracket nearby is nothing but a stub of charred wood. You walk forward, careful not to let your feet slap the stone, and that's when you see it. Down the hallway, just before the curve in the spiral stair, a figure, tall, still, and facing the wall, not moving, not turning, just there. You stop. Your throat tightens, not from fear, but from recognition, not of the person, but of the moment. You've seen this before, maybe in a dream, maybe in a story, maybe passed down in whispers. Some say the cold does strange things to the sleeping mind, that if you wander the halls in a certain state, between sleep and waking, the castle shows you pieces of itself it keeps hidden in daylight. You take a step back, the figure doesn't move, and quietly you return to your bed. You lie down, pull the blanket to your chin, and close your eyes. Because whatever you saw, whether ghost, dream, or fever, belongs to the night, and you belong to your second sleep. You wake again just before dawn, not with a start, but with that quiet, uncertain exhale that marks the end of a dream you won't quite remember. For a moment, you lie still, unsure whether the figure in the hall was real or simply the castle playing its usual tricks. The details are already blurring. Was it facing you? Facing away? Was there even anyone there at all? You stretch slowly, letting the aches surface one by one. Your shoulders are stiff, your neck clicks when you turn, and your ankles feel brittle, as if they've been carved from the same stone you've slept upon. But your breath is steady, and your eyes adjust more easily now to the pale grey beginning to seep through the shutters. The world is returning. Your cloak is half off, tangled around your knees. The blanket is damp again, body heat trapped against stone and cloth, rising in steam and settling back as chill. You could get up now, but something keeps you rooted. A need to linger just a little longer in the haze before the castle stirs. You turn your head toward the door. It's closed, as you left it. And there's no one in the hall. You wonder if anyone else has these nights. If they wake between first sleep and second and see the strange angles of the castle, the way the moonlight stretches in shapes that don't exist during the day, if they too sense that the walls remember more than they reveal. Maybe that's why medieval people spoke of dreams as messages, not from gods or spirits necessarily, but from the place itself, the house, the stone, the night. You remember the laundry girl who once whispered that dreams after midnight are the ones that come true, that anything seen between sleeps has meaning. She wouldn't say what she had seen, just clutched the cross at her neck and walked faster past the tower. You roll to your side and pull the blanket up once more. You're not cold, not exactly, but the memory of it lingers, like a smell, like smoke long after the fire is out. And in that moment of near waking you feel it again, the hush, the strange in-between silence that only exists when no one else is truly awake, when the castle belongs not to its lord, not to its servants, but to itself. You close your eyes, and this time, when you sleep, there are no figures, no footsteps, no shadows cast in impossible directions. Just stillness, a silence without weight, and for once, a dreamless, undisturbed end to a long, flickering night. Morning doesn't arrive all at once in a medieval castle. There's no burst of sunshine, no cheerful chime of an alarm. Instead it creeps in, grey light through warped shutters, the distant clatter of buckets in the courtyard, a cough echoing off stone somewhere 2 floors below. It's a slow unravelling of silence, and today it finds you sore. You wake in the same cramped position you fell asleep in, legs curled, hands tucked beneath your cloak, the blanket twisted around your knees, your cheek is pressed into rough straw, and it's left creases across your skin. The cold hasn't left, but it's lost its sharpness. Now it's just heavy, lingering, familiar. Your first thought is, you survived it. Again. You sit up slowly, each joint registering its complaint. Your back feels like it was braced against a tree trunk all night. Your fingers are stiff, your throat is dry, but none of it surprises you. This is what waking in a castle is. Never fresh, never easy, just a return from the long, quiet battle of the night, and then you swing your feet to the floor. That's when the real cruelty begins. The stone is freezing, not metaphorically, truly, deeply, physically frozen. Your toes curl instinctively, your heels barely graze the ground before you wince and pull them back. It doesn't matter how many times you do this, the floor always wins. You wrap your cloak tighter and hop to the wall, where your boots sit stiffly in the corner. You try to slide them on, but the leather has hardened overnight. You have to shove, grunt, twist your foot like you're trying to unlock a frozen door. When they're finally on, they're cold enough to make your eyes water. Water, you think. You shuffle to the basin near the wall, where a servant left a pitcher the night before. You pour a little into the bowl and stare at it. It's frozen. Not solid, but slushy. Half ice, half water, like winter soup. You press your fingers into it and flinch. You know you need to wash, but you hesitate. Who would choose this? You brace yourself and splash it onto your face anyway. The jolt is immediate. Your skin tightens, your teeth clench. You gasp and hold the side of the basin until the dizziness passes. This is what morning means here. No gentle entry into the day, no stretching in sun-dappled sheets. Just cold water, stiff boots, and a body that takes 10 minutes to remember how to move. And yet, as you dry your face with the edge of your cloak, something in you feels steadier. You know the rhythm now, the ritual. You take your time rolling your blanket. You fold your cloak just so. You gather your belongings, though there are few. This is how it works in the castle. No matter how rough the night, no matter how bitter the frost, you rise, you move, you continue. You step into the hallway and feel the draft waiting for you. It greets you like an old friend. You breathe in. It hurts a little, but you do it again, because the worst of the night is over, and now comes the day. The corridor is no warmer than your chamber. If anything, the wind moves freer here, whistling up the stairwell and curling around your ankles like a trickster with icy hands. But your steps are steady now. The cold is familiar, not welcome, but expected. You brace against it without thinking. Downstairs, the castle is stirring. A scullery boy races past you barefoot, his breath puffing out in frantic little clouds as he mutters curses under his breath. His hair is damp with frost, and he's carrying a bundle of kindling almost as tall as himself. You wonder if he slept at all. In the great hall, the hearth is being stoked back to life. The coals from last night are black and smothered, but a young servant is poking at them with a long iron rod, coaxing sparks like secrets from ash. You sit on the edge of a bench nearby, not close enough for warmth. There isn't much yet, but near enough to pretend. The morning routine is in full swing. Trenches are being scraped clean of old crust, resanded and reused. The stale scent of ale-soaked wood lingers in the air. Rushes on the floor are being raked aside and replaced, and already you hear the faint snapping of frost underfoot as someone scatters the fresh batch, mixed with dried herbs to hide the scent of unwashed bodies. Someone hands you a chunk of bread. It's hard, uneven, and dense enough to hurt if thrown, but you chew it slowly. The warmth from your breath softens it just enough to swallow. No butter, no honey, just salt and grain, and a hint of smoke from the room itself. You wonder, did nobles eat better? Sleep warmer? Certainly. But even they weren't spared the cold entirely. Those grand feather beds in the solar chamber might have velvet hangings and cushions, but the stone beneath was the same, and the wind crept through even the richest curtains when winter pressed hard enough. Everyone in the castle fought the cold, just in different layers. You lean back slightly, listening to the rhythmic sound of someone sweeping behind you. Someone else groans as they stir from sleep on the far side of the hall. A girl hums quietly while folding linens, and the melody is familiar. A winter tune, something about sparrows and hearths. It sounds older than anyone here, and suddenly you realise something. You made it, not just through the night, but through another night. One of 1,000. One that blurred into the long icy string of all the others. A night where the castle didn't offer comfort, only endurance. Where the walls didn't warm you, but didn't fail you either. That's the bargain. And now, as the fire slowly crackles back to life, you feel your feet again. Your fingers flex more easily. The bread in your hand no longer feels like stone, and just for a moment the day feels possible. You stretch your arms, cracking your shoulders with a deep breath, and let your gaze settle on the glowing embers. The castle is awake now, and so are you. You step outside just as the first light edges over the horizon. The castle courtyard is bathed in frost, a pale shimmer dusting every surface, from the worn stone steps to the wooden water buckets stacked against the wall. Even the thatch on the outbuildings looks sugar-coated, stiff and glinting like it belongs in some wintry fairy tale. But you know better. You wrap your cloak tighter and tread carefully across the uneven cobbles. Each step crunches underfoot. Your breath escapes in steady clouds, and the wind slices across your cheeks like paper. There's a numbness behind your eyes that sleep hasn't cured, and yet there's something almost beautiful about this moment. The sky is soft, grey, pink, then streaks of gold, and for a few minutes everything is hushed. Even the dogs haven't started barking yet. The chickens huddle quietly in their coop, and the blacksmith's fire hasn't yet been kindled. It's the fragile space between sleep and toil. You find a spot by the gatehouse, where the stone wall blocks some of the wind, and lean against it. From here you can see the smoke beginning to rise from the kitchens. Thin tendrils curl upward, promising warmth you're still too far from. It gives you time to think. Not just about last night, but all the nights. You remember the first one, how your fingers wouldn't stop trembling, how the cold felt like betrayal, like a punishment. You remember lying awake, eyes wide open in the dark, waiting for the numbness to take hold, wondering if you'd ever truly rest again. But then you did, and then you did again. Night after night, you've learned the rhythms, the ways to wrap the blanket so it traps your breath, the best side of the straw mattress to curl into, the quiet tricks of survival passed in whispers, heated stones, double stockings, sleeping in pairs. There were moments, of course, where the cold nearly won, when you couldn't feel your toes and doubted they'd still be there in the morning, when a gust howled through a cracked window and left your bones aching for hours, when your dreams were strange and your sleep so shallow it felt like drowning in air. But each time, the dawn came, and so did you. You glance at your hands, red and rough, but working. Your boots, worn but whole. You survived, not with comfort, but with knowledge, with small rituals, with borrowed warmth. with the hard-earned wisdom of a body that knows what it means to sleep in stone. And you know now that the castle never cared about your comfort, but it did teach you to care for your own. You push off the wall and walk toward the kitchen smoke. Your feet still ache, your joints still protest, but the warmth waiting on the other side of that door, whether it's fire or porridge or simply the company of others, it's enough. Because the night is over, and you've made it through. Again. Inside the kitchen it's already crowded, not with noise, yet, but with motion. A dozen hands at work, sleeves rolled up, cheeks pink with the first heat of the morning. There's bread being sliced with dull knives, smoke curling from a pan of onions, a girl crushing dried herbs into a small ceramic bowl. A copper kettle hums low over the flames, and someone's poking at the ashes from last night's cook fire, coaxing the coals back into orange. You slip in and find your corner, close to the hearth but not so close as to lose feeling when you leave. The heat hits your skin like a wall. You don't step back. Instead, you close your eyes. This is your reward. It's not luxury. There are no quilts here, no feather beds, no wool-lined slippers to ease the sting. Your breakfast will be simple, millet porridge, or maybe a boiled egg if you're lucky. And your shift will begin before the sun's climbed a handbreadth above the treetops. You'll haul buckets or sweep hallways or scrub the soot off of someone else's boots. The day ahead will be long, but you will walk into it with your blood moving, your breath steady. Because you slept. You didn't freeze. You didn't lose your fingers. You didn't cry from the pain of it, at least not where anyone could hear. And in this world, in this castle, that's everything. A woman hands you a bowl without looking. You nod in thanks and wrap your fingers around it. The warmth bleeds into your palms slowly. You take a bite and feel it slide down your throat like medicine. Someone near the fire begins humming again. Same tune as yesterday, same broken rhythm. It's one of those melodies that doesn't really have a name, just something passed from voice to voice, surviving because it's useful, because it comforts, like the way everyone knows how to bank the coals before bed, like wrapping stones in cloth and placing them beneath your knees, the wisdom of cold places. You glance around the room. There are others here who shared the night with you. You don't speak. You don't need to. A glance, a nod, a hand adjusting a fraying scarf. That's enough. That's the language of survival. The quiet code of those who understand what it means to sleep beneath centuries of stone, beneath beams that creak when the wind howls too long, in a world where fire is fleeting and warmth must be earned. The sun begins to rise now, truly rise. Its first golden edge cuts across the floor like a blade, touching a spilled bucket, a bent spoon, a threadbare cloak drying on a peg. And for a moment, the castle feels alive in a different way. Not cruel, not cold, just present, and somehow still holding you. You finish your meal, you rise, you stretch your back until it pops. And as you step into the stone corridor once more, the cold greets you like an old rival. You smile. You've done this before. You'll do it again. You've made it through the castle night. Stone walls, frozen breath, winding stairs and fireless hours. Somehow your body learned the rhythm, your fingers found the folds in the blanket, and your mind found enough quiet to rest, even with the wind howling just outside the shutters. You remember the weight of the wool cloak around your shoulders, the rough edge of straw beneath your legs, the faint warmth of the bedpan, already cooling but still clung to like a treasure. You remember the smell of smoke lingering in every corner, the sounds of sleep all around you, soft snores, creaking beams, a kettle sighing somewhere in the dark. And now the night is done. No matter how cold the stone, the sun still rises. That's the secret everyone knew back then. Not how to make the castle warm, but how to make yourself last. how to tuck in your toes and share your breath, how to trust that no matter how brutal the night feels, morning will come, maybe slowly, maybe painfully, but always. And now, as your body softens beneath the covers in your own bed, the only frost is in your imagination. Let it linger just a little longer, just enough to appreciate the warmth you have now. Let your breath slow, let your limbs grow heavy, and remember, even the coldest nights end in light.